Hello everyone out there, welcome to my channel that is Science Unlocked. So in the previous session we were talking about the spoilage of food and we have started the chapter that is preservation of food. So now we are moving to the main topic of the chapter that is preservation of food. So first of all, what is the meaning of preservation? Preservation simply means that we are going to preserve something, we are going to keep something fresh, or you can say we are going to prevent anything from any kind of damage, any kind of spoilage. Now as we are specifically focusing on the concept of food, then of course we will be using the term spoilage over here. Now when the preservation term is used with reference to food, what exactly is the meaning of the statement? That means that we are going to keep the food in such a condition and we are going to provide such chemical and physical treatments to the food so that it does not get spoiled. And of course, if it is not going to get spoiled, then we are going to have better usage of that particular resource with us. Okay, now can we preserve food for a very long time, or you can say like for ages? Then in that case the answer to the question is yes as well as no, because what happens is there are different kinds of food items which can be preserved for, let us say, a specific number of time. Let us say the seeds and cereals, they can be preserved for a time duration of approximately like 5 to 10 years. But at the very same time, if we are going to talk about the food which is already cooked, then in that case the time period for which the preservation can be done reduces, and it reduces tremendously. Means what exactly it means is that whenever the cooked food is the one which we are trying to preserve, then in that case we can preserve it only for say 3 to 5 days, and that is the maximum amount I am talking about. Of course there are certain exceptional cases in terms of food, cooked food as well, but at the very same time when we are talking about our day-to-day life, in that case the duration reduces to 3 to 5 days. Now we will be looking into the different kinds of methods of food preservation, and you will see that the two factors which are responsible for the spoilage are the ones which we are going to keep in mind while designing or adopting the method of preservation of food. Now the very first one is the process of heating. Now what happens is, how we say this thing, or you can say how are we going to say that a particular material has undergone the process of heating? Because that particular material or food will going to have a very high temperature. Yes, so that is something very much common with all the food materials which has gone through the process of heating. Now what exactly happens there? That different kinds of microorganisms are going to get killed in case of heating, or you can say in process of heating. Because what happens is, as we have discussed in our previous session, that the growth of microorganisms require certain specific kind of environmental conditions, wherein the heating process is going to completely change the condition and it will going to make it unfavorable, it will going to make it unsuitable for the growth. Because what happens is, maximum microorganisms cannot survive at very high temperature. So this particular process has been used from ages for preserving the food for a very long time, and the best example for this is heating or boiling of milk. Now what happens is, the similar kind of process is optimized and has been developed by a particular scientist, which is Louis Pasteur, and the process is known as pasteurization. Now what happens is, this particular scientist did certain experiments where he found out that if we are going to keep the food article at certain temperatures alternatively and then we are going to store it, then in that case the particular food can be preserved for a very long time, because this way the natural conditions which are required by the microorganisms to grow will not be achieved, and automatically the microorganisms will not grow. So that is what happens is, different kinds of food articles like packaged and unpackaged food, juices, milk and many other things are treated at different temperatures, and the temperatures are generally with reference to heated temperatures, means they are going to be high temperatures. And what happens, what will going to happen after that, that it will going to kill all the pathogens means we are talking about the microorganisms only, and it will going to improve the time period, or you can say it can extend the time period with which we can use that particular food. Now what is the next technique that we have? The next technique is drying. Now what happens is, during the process of drying, what we are going to do is, we are going to keep the particular food article in sunlight, or alternatively in dry conditions, because these two situations are going to reduce the moisture of the food material. As a result of that, what will happen? The microorganisms will not be able to grow. Now out of the two conditions, which is the particular factor which we are looking into? We are talking about the moisture content. So the microorganisms are not going to get the moisture they require for their growth, so they will not be able to grow there. Like different kinds of fruits, different kinds of spices have been used from ages after the process of drying. So these are the things which have been used from a very long time, and it is a part of the culture as well, with which we can keep the food usable and edible for a very long time. Now what is the next process that we have? That is cooling and freezing. Now what happens is, we are going to keep the food at very low temperature, because cooling or freezing simply means the temperature is very low. As in the case of our refrigerators, the temperature is very low. That is why the ice is able to get freezed up. Sometimes even the milk get freezed up if you are going to keep it there for a very long time and just next to the freezer of the refrigerator. So what happens is, this is what is the natural process, but with today's technology we have improved this particular process, and we can create these situations and these conditions in our day-to-day life. Because if, like for example, I am living in Delhi, so in that case I cannot create a freezing temperature every time. There are only certain duration in the year where I am going to have freezing temperature. In fact, not even that, like hardly for 2-3 days. But on the other hand, if I am having a refrigerator, I can create it any day, even in the hottest days of the year. So what happens is, this cooling and freezing process is going to again do the same process, that it will not going to provide the temperature which is required by the particular microorganism to grow, because of which we can actually help in the preservation of food. Like over here right in front of you, and the very best example is the meat or flesh. They are being preserved at low temperatures only. Now what is the next kind of process, or you can say the next kind of preservation technique? That is the usage of salt and sugar. Now you all must be thinking, then how come another spice which is generally used for the process of cooking is going to help in the preservation? Generally what happens is, when we use salt or sugar for the process of cooking, then that particular material also get cooked and it get mixed with that particular food item. But here we are using it in raw format, means we are going to use it directly and we are not going to cook it. This way what will happen, that these two material, that is salt as well as sugar, these two things are going to keep the moisture away from the food. As a result of that, what will happen? Again, the microorganisms will not be able to grow. Like over here we have these two examples, that is where the usage of high amount of salt will going to keep it preserved for a long time. This way what will happen, the moisture will not be there in the food, resulting into the process of savage and preservation of food from the process of spoilage. So next is what? Next we have our next technique, that is oiling, which is somehow just say like in the case that we just right now in the previous slide we were discussing about, it is the similar kind of process, but here what will going to happen is we are going to keep the amount of oil in the food very high, because this way what will happen, the particular amount of moisture which is there in the food will be logged. Because what happens is, when something is there which is oily, means any kind of oil which is there, like we are specifically talking about the different kinds of cooking oils that we have. We are right now focusing on the cooking processes and food only. So the kind of oils which are used for the cooking purposes and preservation purposes, they are the ones like the simple mustard oil, soybean oil, then we have groundnut oil, then we have a normal refined oil, then we have different kinds of oils that are available for the cooking purposes. So all these particular oil are going to make a layer which is going to be on top of the food, because of which the moisture will stay inside the food only, inside this layer only, as a result of which there will not be direct contact between the environment and the food. As a result of that, even if the food is having moisture, it will not get the growth of microorganisms, as a result of which the food will be preserved. So now you can say this thing, that in all the methods that we have discussed till now, we are looking into only two concepts. Either we are working on the temperature at which the food is kept, or we are working on the amount of moisture present inside the food or around the food. Now, why we are focusing on these two things only? Because these are the ones which are responsible for the growth of microorganisms, and they are the major reason behind the spoilage of food. So this was for today's class and today's session, and next we will meet soon. Till then, stay safe, stay home and keep learning. All the best.